This video is rated B for you'd better back on out of here if you don't want spoilers, buddy. Hello everyone! Today we'll be discussing another alien entity that fell to our world long ago. Unlike many of my stories and analyses, you'll have to bear with me on this one. Despite having existed on our world for thousands of years, much about it is unknown, and could remain a mystery for the rest of our star's existence. So, let us gather around once more, my friends, as we come together to understand the living machine we call Omega. Omega itself comes from a race of machine-like entities called the Omicrons, but they weren't always machines. You see, the Omicrons lived on a star they referred to as Alphatron. Originally, they were one of the weakest species on the planet, easily defeated and outclassed by everything else that lived there. The only thing that they had going for themselves was that their intellect as a species was off the charts, allowing them to progress in the field of technological advancement at a remarkable pace. To make up for their physical shortcomings, they began to augment themselves with cybernetics. What started out as minor upgrades and mechanical exoskeletons turned into replacing limbs with stronger metallic ones. Their lives did visibly improve because of this, since nothing could easily push them around anymore. But with this taste of power came its own breed of madness, and the augmentations began to spiral out of control. They would amputate healthy limbs just to replace them with powerful prosthetics. Next were their internal organs, which steadily got replaced as well. And lastly, they discovered a way to convert one's thoughts and memories into pure data, which finally made the brain obsolete. In the end, everything organic about them was replaced, and all that was left was a race of robots with living memories. Whether they were able to convert their souls into data and keep them, I don't know. It's possible that as their physical form died, they lost their souls as well. Which would explain what happened next. The Omicrons were now fully cybernetic, becoming the dominant race on their star. The strength of their metallic bodies combined with their superior intellect made them impossible to overcome. The weakness they hated so much was now a bad memory, but they sacrificed everything to get it. During their time as the dominant species, they discovered that their star wasn't the only one capable of sustaining life. This created a sickening paranoia in their minds. They may have become the strongest race on their world, but what if something in the vastness of their universe was stronger than them? Then they'd go right back to being the weakest thing, and this fear of weakness tormented them. But at the same time, their race had devoured too much of their star's resources in the quest for perfection, and their world was dying. This created two factions of Omicrons. The Regenerator faction, that wanted to devote their knowledge and power to saving Alphatron, and the Invader faction, one that wanted to travel the universe and conquer other stars to not only make themselves stronger, but to take the resources of other worlds as well. In the end, the Invader faction won, and Alphatron was left to die. Gods only know what happened to its ethereal center and lifestream. They began their conquest of the universe with a star called Gordona. Around this world was an asteroid belt rich with metallic resources, perfect for the Omicron's development. And just like Alphatron, once this star's species were subjugated and resources removed, they moved on. Like a cancer, the Omicrons spread across the universe, doing everything in their power to assert that they were the strongest in existence. But eventually, they arrived at the Dragon Star, and the dragons would prove to be their greatest challenge. Unlike the other worlds the Omicrons conquered, the dragons were unbelievably strong and weren't about to give up their world without a fight. For a while, the dragons fought toe-to-toe with their invaders, not giving an ilm. But everything changed when an Omicron named Stigma 4 learned how to copy the dragon's ability to naturally evolve into something more powerful. This created the first prototype frame of Omega. Omega would go through many testing phases and variations before becoming what we know. But what set this Omicron apart from the others was the fact that it had an onboard etheric replicator and the freedom to self-augment. This meant that Omega could create anything it wanted by simply converting ambient aether. On top of that, it had the freedom to improve itself should the need become apparent. An already powerful weapon that could make itself stronger. Eventually, the Omega we know of was finally created mid-conflict on the Dragon Star. Its primary objective was to test its new systems against the dragons themselves. Most of these tests ended in Omega's victory, but one dragon fought Omega to a standstill. That dragon was Megardzemer. Now, at this point, the history and relationship between Omega and the Father of Dragons gets muddled. For you see, by the time Omega fought Megardzemer, the Dragon Star was devastated beyond saving by the constant war. The star was on the brink of death from the constant destruction and consumption of resources like aether. So much so that even after the Omicrons won, it was a Pyrrhic victory. The Dragon Star was so thoroughly destroyed that the remaining resources didn't exceed the cost of the conflict. This left the Omicrons to sit and ponder why they were doing this in the first place, and what being the strongest species would even mean. But before that happened, Megardzemer took a clutch of eggs and used all of his strength to fly away from the star, in search of a new home. This saw the dragon fly through our universe for an unknown amount of time, before eventually landing on Aetheris. He was exhausted from his journey, but was granted asylum by Hydaelyn. But Megardzemer unintentionally brought something with him. He brought Omega. This single Omicron had chased the dragon across the universe. Omega traveled for so long that some of its components and memory banks were severely damaged, and Omega itself likely forgot why it chose to follow Megardzemer in the first place. Did it simply wish to prove itself against a powerful opponent? Or was it reluctantly following the orders of other Omicrons? I don't know. I wasn't there. But regardless of why, Omega did follow Megardzemer and crash-landed on our star. Its broken body going into a deep hibernation as it slowly made repairs to itself, making sure it was ready to fight the Dragon King at any moment. Now that we've covered its history, let's discuss the machine itself. Omega is a living and completely autonomous machine life form like all the other Omicrons. It's complete with its own personality and conscious mind. But it seems to lack any kind of emotion or understanding of emotions. Its mental domain is a realm of pure analytics. There are no such things as good and evil to Omega, only actions and results. What you are and where you come from means nothing to this machine. Only what you're capable of will be seen as a statistic of any value. But with its onboard creation engine and remarkable intellect, Omega itself could have been considered a machine god by lower life forms. I do not know when exactly Omega landed on our world, or when it finished its repairs, but eventually, the Allagan Empire did stumble upon Omega in the Third Astral Era. Omega activated itself once again, and began to communicate with the Allagan researchers that discovered it. What transpired after first contact is mostly speculation since I found no official Allagan records on the subject. Some research samples have stated that Omega, in its curiosity, willingly aided the Empire in their technological endeavors. Other statements assert that Omega was brought to heel by Allagan Magitech, becoming little more than a resource of study and a machine of war. Regardless of the truth, this would ultimately explain how the Allagans made such massive leaps in things like artificial intelligence and ethereal manipulation within the Third Astral Era. If this is true, then by extension, Omega's technology could be used by groups that reverse engineer Allagan tech, such as the Garlean Empire within Ilsabard and the Onishishu in the Far East. It makes sense, since Omega boasts a superior method of converting ambient aether into anything it needs. whether it be weapons, repair materials, or even living creatures. It can be assumed that Omega learned of the existence of dragons on Hydaelyn through the Allagans, and was likely eager to fight them to satisfy its reason for traversing the universe. Eventually, a fully repaired Omega was unleashed upon the world, and aided in the battle against an Elder Primal, the Dreadwyrm Bahamut. Omega began to do battle with Bahamut, and eventually emerged victorious. However, Omega didn't slay the Primal. It simply assisted in containing the beast so that the Allagan Empire could build Dalamud around it. Eventually, Omega went back to a dormant state so that it could process what it learned from the fight, running countless simulations. It would then rest in the region we know as the Cartano Flats until our current age, the 7th Astral Era. Omega would be rediscovered and activated once more to do battle with a dragon-like entity called Shinryu. Like Bahamut before him, Shinryu was a dragon-like primal that Omega was awakened to test itself against. Omega did battle with Shinryu, and like its fight with Bahamut, eventually won the contest, causing Shinryu to be captured by one of the machine's many weapons. The information that follows after its battle with Shinryu gets strange, but I'll do my best to explain regardless. Apparently, Omega was blasted away during its fight with Shinryu, getting launched through a mountain and into the fringes of Girabanya. When it landed, Omega saw no more value in working with the mortal races of our world, and instead began to run a series of tests. It used its power to gather and condense a massive amount of aether within the crater it caused called the Yawn. Here, it created a sort of pocket dimension called the Interdimensional Rift, where it could create and test dozens of fictional and realistic entities against one another to decide what it should focus on next for its evolution. Make no mistake, these tests were a world-ending threat to our star, as Omega had no qualms in holding our star hostage or even destroying it if it meant furthering its evolution. Thankfully, Omega was defeated within the Interdimensional Rift, putting an end to the rampant desires it inherited from the Omicron race. While the collapse of the rift did mark the end of Omega's evolution, that wasn't the end of its legacy. Omega's power is something that our star will not soon forget, and its existence proved that the stories that Megardsmer told us about his home were all true. Omega's, and by extension, the Omicron race's story is one of bloody evolution and the never-ending journey for greater power for the sake of power. However, let this be a lesson to us all. The greater you become and the more recklessly you climb the mountain of progress, the easier it is to fall, and the more willing you are to let go of things that are ultimately important. Be patient and mindful of how your decisions not only affect yourself, but the people and things around you. If you do, you will evolve and improve just like the Omicrons did. But unlike them, you'll reach that state without letting go of your heart. Hello everyone! Thanks for staying to the end of the lesson. If you enjoyed this and want to see more, subscribe and like this video to let me know I'm doing well. If there is a topic you'd want me to cover in the future, leave a comment about it and I'll see what I can do. Until next we meet, I'll be researching even more of our world's rich lore to share with you. Till then, stay safe my friends.